What Trump just did is beyond incredible, and everyone is still asking the wrong question. Whether Iran actually picked up the phone or whether this is theater dressed up as diplomacy, whether the denial from Tehran means the whole thing falls apart before the week is out. I understand why people are asking that. It is the obvious question. It is also the wrong one. The right question is this. 6 presidents tried to bring Iran to the table on its nuclear program. 6. Over 40 years. With sanctions, with diplomacy, with multilateral frameworks, with goodwill gestures, with carefully worded agreements that Tehran signed and then quietly ignored. And not one of them produced what happened this morning. Not one of them had Iran in a position where, deny it publicly or not, the oil market moved 14% on the possibility of a deal. That is what I want to talk about today. Not whether the talks survived the week, whether the method worked. And the data this morning is unambiguous about the answer. Let me give you the scale of what Trump was walking into when this campaign began 24 days ago. The International Energy Agency's executive director, Fatih Birol, spoke publicly this morning for the first time since the war began. He had stayed quiet for 3 weeks. When he finally spoke, here is what he said. The oil crises of 1973 and 1979 each removed roughly 5 million barrels per day from global supply. Both of those crises together, 10 million barrels per day, produced recessions across the Western world, stagflation, gas lines, economic damage that took years to repair. As of this morning, this conflict has removed 11 million barrels per day, more than both of those crises combined, and on top of that, 140 billion cubic meters of natural gas have been pulled from global markets, nearly twice the disruption Europe suffered when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. That is what the global economy was staring at before Trump posted anything this morning. The price of oil tells you what the market fears. It does not tell you who caused the problem, but it tells you exactly how serious the problem is. And the problem, measured in barrels per day removed from supply, was the worst energy shock in recorded history. Now here is where the analysis has to be precise, because the mainstream coverage is sloppy about this. Every previous administration approached Iran with a specific theory of how pressure works. The theory was essentially this: apply enough economic pain through sanctions, wait long enough, and Iran will negotiate from weakness. Obama tried it. The result was the 2015 nuclear agreement, which Iran signed, which constrained some enrichment activity, and which fell apart the moment the political winds shifted. Biden tried a softer version of the same theory, offering relief in exchange for concessions, and got nothing structural in return. 6 administrations, 40 years, the same basic playbook with minor variations, and Iran's nuclear program kept advancing. Trump's theory is different. It is not about waiting. It is about changing the calculation in real time by making the cost of not dealing immediately visible and immediately credible. Gas prices in America rose for 23 consecutive days before this morning. They hit $3.96 per gallon, the highest since August of 2022. The average price was up $1.02 in a single month. To put that in terms anyone can feel, that 1-month increase was larger than what Americans experienced after Hurricane Katrina. It was larger than the spike that followed Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Iran war was sitting in every American driveway in a form impossible to ignore. That is the domestic cost Trump was managing while simultaneously applying pressure to Tehran. And he did not blink. He issued the ultimatum on Saturday, 48 hours. Open the Strait of Hormuz or the United States will strike Iran's power plants. Iran responded by threatening to mine the entire Persian Gulf and target energy and water infrastructure across the Gulf region. Markets wobbled. Analysts warned of catastrophic escalation. The foreign policy establishment, The people who produced 40 years of the same results said the ultimatum was reckless. And then Iran called. Trump told reporters this morning in his own words, "They called, he did not call." He said the United States had been prepared to destroy what he described as Iran's largest electricity generation facility, a project that cost more than $10 billion to build. He said Iran looked at that threat and made a calculation. Why would they want that destroyed? So they called. That sentence contains the entire theory of the case. This is not recklessness. This is a specific understanding of how adversaries make decisions. They do not make decisions based on the abstract threat of future consequences. They make decisions when the cost of the next 24 hours becomes unbearable. Trump made the next 24 hours unbearable, and Iran moved. Now I want to give you the market data, because the market data is the most honest commentary available on whether this approach is working. Goldman Sachs issued a forecast this morning before Trump's post, projecting Brent crude would average $110 per barrel through April. That was the baseline reality the world was operating in. Then Trump posted on Truth Social at 7 in the morning Eastern Time. Brent crude fell more than 14%. West Texas Intermediate dropped to around $89 a barrel at its low, its cheapest price since the war began on February 28th. $1.7 trillion was added to American stock markets within minutes. The Dow surged roughly 1,000 points. The S&P 500 gained about 2%. Every single sector in the index traded higher. One post, $1.7 trillion. The market is not sentimental. It does not reward theater. It reprices risk when it believes the risk has genuinely changed. The sequence that followed is also worth reading carefully. Oil fell on Trump's announcement. Oil partially recovered when Iran's foreign ministry denied any talks were happening. Oil fell again when Trump doubled down and told Fox Business a deal could come within days. What that sequence tells you is that the market is tracking Trump's credibility, not Iran's statements, and the market has decided Trump's credibility on this is real. I want to put this in a context that 40 years of policy history makes clear. The 1973 oil embargo was not resolved by American pressure. It ended when Arab members of OPEC decided the political objective had been achieved. The 1979 crisis played out across years, with no single actor resolving it through direct leverage. In neither case did any American president walk up to the edge of destroying specific infrastructure, name the price tag of that infrastructure, put a clock on it, and produce a phone call as a result. That has not happened before. It is happening now. The IEA released a record 400 million barrels from strategic stockpiles to try to stabilize prices, the largest emergency reserve release in history. And Birol said this morning it was not the solution. He said the single most important solution to this problem is opening the Strait of Hormuz. That is the world's leading energy security authority saying that everything else, every reserve barrel, every rerouted tanker, every production incentive offered to Canada and Mexico, is secondary to the one outcome that required actual leverage to produce. Trump is the only actor in this crisis with that leverage, and he used it. I have spent 4 decades watching commodity markets and crisis negotiations. I have sat in rooms where the analysis was softened before it reached decision makers because the honest version was too uncomfortable. I stopped doing that work because ordinary people deserved the unfiltered version. Here is the unfiltered version as of today, March 23rd, 2026. The worst energy shock in recorded history was building. 11 million barrels per day removed from supply. Gas at nearly $4 a gallon and rising for 3 weeks straight. The IEA warning that no country on earth would be immune if the crisis continued. And a 48-hour ultimatum from one man produced a market movement that 400 million barrels from strategic reserves could not. Whether you prefer a more diplomatic style is a legitimate personal preference. That preference does not change the data. The data says one thing clearly. 6 presidents, 40 years, the same playbook, no structural outcome on Iran's nuclear program. 24 days with a different playbook, and Iran is at the table, denying it loudly, which is exactly what governments do when they are at the table and do not want their domestic audience to know it. Trump's stated goal from here is simple. The Strait opens. Iran gives up nuclear weapons permanently. Oil prices drop like a rock. That last part is not incidental. That is the consumer outcome attached to the strategy as an explicit objective. The gas price in your tank is part of the policy goal, not just a side effect. 5 days. That is the window. The negotiators are working. The markets are watching. And for the first time in 4 decades, the other side is talking. The question for the people who spent those 4 decades telling us there was a better, softer, more patient way is simple. You had 40 years. What did you get?